Okay, so without further ado, please welcome Jaclyn Glenn.
Hey guys, so glad that a lot of you were able to make it out. That's bright. So this is really exciting for me because I am used to talking to a camera lens, and an actual audience is much different, but it's more personal and it's something that I really enjoy, and I like the Q&A after and getting to have conversations with everybody. It's really nice. And I normally try to make things really funny and entertaining in videos, but today I might try to keep it a little bit more serious just because, like I said, it's more of a personal thing. I want you guys to be able to get to learn a little bit about me, things that I don't necessarily talk about in videos. So I want to kind of start off and give you a bit of my background just so that you can kind of know where I'm coming from. And then I'm going to talk about, in my opinion, the reasons why atheism is so stigmatized among people, why people are so afraid of the word and they think that we're these evil people. And then once I go through that, I'm going to talk about ways that I think that we can try to improve that and try to get people to view it more positively, because I think that they should. And like I said, it's something that's pretty personal to me. I don't know how you guys feel about it, but I'm pretty passionate about this topic. And it's disheartening, to say the least, to find people who look at you funny whenever they find out that you're an atheist. Family and friends, or just strangers that you're having a conversation with, they find out that you're not religious and they automatically trust you less. They look at you and they raise an eyebrow and they kind of step back and they're like, oh, there's an atheist. Don't talk to that person. I've experienced that so many times, I can't even begin to explain it. And it's just a really weird feeling, and I hate that that's something that the atheist community has to put up with, because I feel like we're a great group of people. We're nice. We do have morals, contrary to popular belief, and we stand for a lot of really positive things. So I want to talk about that a little bit, and in an effort to keep things positive, I want to say something probably a bit strange. You guys are all murderers. Did you know that? I'm a murderer. You're a murderer. I got that response from a group of people whenever I asked them a question. So imagine for a second standing in a room full of people and having them guess that about you. You must be a murderer. I asked them this. I said, what would I have to be for you to trust me less than a rapist? They all kind of looked at me funny. What kind of question is this? I have a reason for asking, but all of them said, murderer? I mean, did you kill somebody, Jaclyn? I was like, no, I didn't kill anybody. Don't worry, I'm not crazy. I might have the knife that I threw at the end of my videos, but I'm not crazy. So I'm not a murderer. You guys aren't murderers, but we do have one thing going for us. We're less trusted than rapists. Isn't that nice? Something fun to find out about us? The reason why I bring this up is because there was a study done by a psychologist at the University of British Columbia and the University of Oregon. And they polled a bunch of people, various different religious backgrounds. And they asked them this question. They said, let's say that you saw somebody driving a car in a parking lot and they hit a parked car, really damaged the car, and just took off. They left the scene of the accident. Maybe later that day they found a wallet, had a bunch of money in it. They stole it. They didn't turn it in to lost and found or anything. They kept all the money for themselves. And then they asked these people, what do you think about the person who did this? Do you think they're more likely to be a teacher? No, not a teacher. B, a rapist teacher? I didn't put this together. I don't know why they had to put rapist teacher together. That's how all of them were. Or C, an atheist teacher. Now, because of how I led into this, I'm sure there's no doubt that most people, regardless of their religious backgrounds and upbringings and whatever they believed in, most people said atheist teacher. So this is so frustrating for me to find out, because, really? Really? More distrusted than rapists? You have somebody who's clearly done something very wrong, and then atheists, we just don't believe in God. But for some reason, they're more distrusting of us. That kind of sucks. So I feel like whenever we hear things like this, statistics and things, and we hear it all the time, it's not exactly the most encouraging way to get us to come out. Because, hey, we already know how it's going to be received, right? More distrusted than rapists. Not exactly something that you want to shout from the rooftops. So it's difficult to come out, and I wish I had some moving coming out story for you, because everyone that I know knows this about me. But I don't. My story is a little bit weird, because I was going to school and I decided to develop this little hobby called YouTube, making videos, posting it on the internet. Most people viewed it when I first started off as something very weird. who does that? Just talks to their camera in their room? What a loser. But yeah, I didn't tell anybody that I was doing it. I kept it a secret from my family, from my friends, from everybody. I just knew, just me. And I started off making videos about causes that I was passionate about. I would talk about gay rights even whenever I was a Christian, and whenever I started YouTube, by the way, I was still a Christian. And I would make a lot of my first videos about vegetarianism and animal rights, and that was something that I was really into, which is convenient that we're here tonight, by the way. So, yeah, I did a lot of my first videos on different causes like that, like animal rights. And eventually, as most of you know, I started questioning my faith, and there were a lot of things that bothered me, so I would go on YouTube, and I would look at different atheist videos, and I'd be really offended by some of the stuff that I saw. I mean, really offended. But I didn't really know why. I was like, okay, well, this makes me mad. This pisses me off. But they're right. I couldn't argue with them. But there was still that, knee-jerk reaction to say, oh, that's bad. That's so horrible. Well, the more I became interested in it, the more I learned about myself. And whenever I got to the point of really questioning things, I decided to start expressing that in videos. And I was afraid to do it because I was afraid, at the time I was in medical school, I was afraid that it might affect that, because people have gotten kicked out for less, that's for sure. I was afraid that it would affect different relationships that I had with people, which is exactly why I didn't tell anyone, but I needed it for kind of a selfish reason. I mean, and I'll tell you a little bit more about this later, but I was raised very religious. My family is very religious, friends, very Christian conservative. Who am I supposed to talk to? I had no one to talk to. I wanted to, and I had little conversations here and there, but for the most part, those went pretty terrible. So I didn't want to go there. I've already pissed off my family enough. I don't need to push it even further, so I'll talk to my camera over here. And I became friends with the people on the other side of that camera, and I was like, wow, I'm not alone. There are other people out there who agree with me. There's a whole community out there of people who are supportive and don't think that I'm crazy. And that's actually why I have that not crazy thing, because I'm so used to everyone who I know telling me, oh, you're so crazy. I just decided to embrace it. And then that turned into some kind of joke that I kind of make all the time, but I'm not crazy. And it was nice to have other people there to support me and talk to me and tell me that I wasn't alone and encourage me to keep speaking out against things that I saw that I thought were unjust. So I found this community of people online, and I couldn't stop because, like I said, I had no one else to talk to, and it was so therapeutic for me. And then I started getting messages from people saying that it was helping them, and I was like, oh, I have to keep doing this. This is great. Well, I was kind of stupid to think that I could do this for so long, and have no one find out that I knew in my family. So eventually, I got busted. I did. I was so embarrassed. I was so mortified. But somebody found out. They were probably curious. They were questioning their faith. Actually, I know the person. And they were searching for atheist things. And then they popped up and they're like, I know her, right? And they were so excited about it because they thought it was a cool thing. They were into it. They were interested in the topic. So, of course, they come running to my family. This is so great that Jaclyn is doing this. They're like, she's doing what? Oops. Busted. So that did not go well at all. And to make matters worse, have you guys ever noticed that whenever somebody is new to a cause or a movement or something they're passionate about, they might be a little bit over the top at first? A little bit, yeah. I mean, whenever I became a vegetarian, I was not messing around with that. I would go to my family, some of which were cattle farmers, by the way, and, try to, it didn't go over very well. But I tried to, be the white knight and tell them, you shouldn't do this, and look at all these horrible pictures that I found on Google. And, that didn't go over very well, but like I said, it was almost like trying to evangelize my position on this because I was so passionate about it. And whenever I turned to atheism, I did the same thing. I was a lot more aggressive in my videos because I was kind of pissed off, to be honest. It took me a long time to get to where I was and to feel like I could say I was an atheist. And whenever I finally let go of it, it was a great feeling, but it was a hard process getting there. And whenever I did get there, I was kind of mad because I was thinking about all those years that I spent of my life scared of things and being told all of these things and being lied to, and I just felt deceived and I was angry. I saw all these things going on, and I saw religion as the cause of all these problems, and I was pissed off. So my first videos, whenever I, began talking about religion for a change in my videos, they were really aggressive. I would use curse words way more than I do now, and I was just in your face and mean-faced the whole time. And now I'm a little bit more laid back. Sometimes I'll get into it a little bit, but for the most part, I'm like, here are 7 myths about atheists, smile, and it's not just so aggressive all the time. But I started out that way, and whenever I got busted, that's what they saw. That's the kind of video that they were first exposed to. I was mortified. So after I dealt with that, I think I started, coming into contact with more people who were atheists and stuff, and they would give me their coming out stories. And after a while, I had similar experiences where people would come up to me, and their first reaction when finding out that I was an atheist would be, oh my God, I'm sorry. What happened to you? What traumatic event must have happened in your life, you poor child, you've lost soul. It's always been like a concern, and oh my God, are you okay? No, nothing traumatic happened in my life. There wasn't some major event that made me, lose God. As they would say, you lost God. Well, you can't really lose something you never had. But yeah, they always wonder what must have happened. Now, I'm not going to lie and say that there weren't things that happened to me that maybe made me a little bit more angry towards the topic, but there wasn't some catastrophic event. But I do want to tell you about some of the things that I experienced growing up, very religious. Because I went to Catholic school from kindergarten through senior year in high school. It's a lot of Catholic school. Yeah, we would have an hour of religion class every single day. Wednesday we would go to church with the class, and then again I went with my family on Saturday afternoon. Catholic Mass, that was always so much fun. And so there was pretty heavy indoctrination, and there were some really weird things that I experienced. Things that, would really make me question the sanity of my teachers. They were real, looking back now, I wish I could go and have a conversation with them and let them know exactly how I feel about them. But in about 2nd grade, this is something that stands out. It was Easter, and they decided to come up with a really fun activity for the class, celebrating Easter, happy bright colors and things. No, not bright colors or happy things or Easter eggs or bunnies or fun things that kids should probably experience for holidays. Not me. No, my class got to color in Jesus, but of course, it's not just Jesus standing there with a smile or holding a little lamb. It's, Jesus dead. So we had to color that in, which was fine. I'm kind of used to it by that point. I'm in 2nd grade. I've seen a lot of dead Jesuses by that time in my life. So I'm like, okay, cool. Smile on me, Jesus. I'm going to color him in. No problem. Well, the teachers decided to make it extra special that year, and they cut out our little Jesuses for us, and they laminated them. When you're a kid, it's pretty cool. Lamination, that's like official, Well, they brought our laminated Jesus back the next day, and the whole class is so excited. Yay, we got our Jesuses back. When you're a kid, you play with Barbies or action figures or little things, and you kind of personify your toys. We all kind of did that, we played with our little Jesus, And we were extra lucky that year because not only did they bring us back our laminated Jesuses, they brought us back little wooden crosses and nails. A lot of people think I'm kidding. I'm not. Mom still has my little Jesus cross somewhere. I need to find it. They even brought red paint if you wanted to add dramatic effect. Insane. So we had to hammer our little Jesuses. We had to, nail them to our little cross. Like I said, when you're a kid, you give, character to toys and things that you make, and it felt like you were actually doing it. Some kids were emotional. Girls were crying. I don't want to hurt him. It makes sense when you're a kid. It was kind of horrible. What? Really? What were these teachers thinking? Let's have these kids nail little Jesuses to crosses. That's a great idea. But that's not all, unfortunately. I have other horror stories with my teachers. My parents got divorced when I was really little, and they were married through the Catholic Church. And apparently divorce isn't the legal process of divorce isn't enough for the Catholic Church. You also have to get an annulment whenever you end a marriage. They're pretty serious about this, apparently. It's not in the Bible, but it's in the Catechism of the Catholic Church, which is even better, right? You have to get an annulment. Well, my dad's a musician. He wasn't always around, so it wasn't the easiest thing for him to do. And you know what? They didn't really want to be around each other, which I understand. Whenever you're going through a divorce, your ex is not exactly the person you want to attend counseling sessions with at the Catholic Church. So they were really upset that she didn't do this. And apparently, whenever you don't do this, you're somehow not good enough to receive communion. If you guys don't know what communion is, it's a Catholic practice where you walk around in a circle and you take the cracker, you eat it. It's supposed to be the body of Christ. Transubstantiation, that's a thing. So apparently, because they didn't get an annulment, mom would still go to church. She wasn't holy enough to eat the Jesus cracker. So, she didn't really care. She's like, that's a stupid rule. So she'd do it anyways, right? My teachers would see this and they'd be all, oh, I can't believe she's doing that. They'd be all, snickering to each other. But apparently their little gossip in their little circles wasn't enough, because whenever I would go to school, they would come up to me, little me, and they'd be like, your mom is sinning. Thanks. Yeah, because I don't have to deal with enough problems at home. I need you to make it worse. That's the kind of stuff that I had to deal with. Like, they felt so entitled to tell me that your mom isn't good enough to eat our body of Christ crackers. Thank you. That's really sweet. But this kind of stuff happened even through high school. I remember whenever I was about halfway through high school, I kind of had a little bit of a rebellious streak. Not too bad, but I liked debate, and I liked, trying to challenge different people's opinions, even if I agreed with them, just for fun. And I was in religion class one day, and we were talking about purgatory. That's the in-between heaven and hell thing that Catholics created. And we were having a conversation about kids who aren't baptized, and apparently if you're not baptized, that's where you go. If you die and you're a kid and you have parents of maybe a different faith, maybe atheists, maybe Christians, and they just didn't happen to get you baptized. Well, if you die, Jesus loves the little children, but not that much. You guys get to go to purgatory. So I kind of had an issue with this, and I went back and forth with my teacher, and I stopped just in time to not cause myself serious trouble. But, I was starting to question things. And this was when I was still really religious. I just had little things that I thought were weird. Another thing that always really bothered me looking back was that I had a really close friend since 3rd grade. And he came out as gay to me in college. And he was really emotional about it when he did. And he told me, I'm sorry, you're one of my closest friends, but I couldn't tell you before because I was scared if somebody at school found out that I'd get expelled, because they do that. And I want to get into this Ivy League school to go to college, and if you get expelled from high school, from a private high school, that's definitely not something that's a shining star on your transcript. So it's just kind of weird for me to look back and think that there are people going through these religious schools who are afraid to be themselves because it might ruin their future. To me, that's pretty twisted. So no, there wasn't one catastrophic event that happened to me that made me an atheist. But there are these little things that get under my skin, and they kind of build up. And whenever I first started making videos, I had all that I kind of let spill out into my videos, and you can tell. Another thing that I hear a lot whenever people have to come out is you're only doing it because you want to take the easy way out. You don't want to take responsibility for your actions. You don't want to take responsibility for your sins. You don't want to have to face God's judgment. Really? The easy way out? I mean, I don't know what you guys might have had to go through, but for me, it was not an easy decision to be an atheist. I didn't want to be an atheist, honestly. Even though I was struggling with a relationship with God, I never really felt that thing. I still kind of wanted there to be. And letting go of that kind of felt like a relationship was dying. It felt like a part of me was gone. And not only that, you have to face the social repercussions. You have to face your family. You have to face your friends. You lose that community that you may have been a part of. And then you have to obviously deal with people looking at you like you're some kind of freak or, spawn of Satan because you don't believe in God. Everybody wants there to be an afterlife. Nobody wants to be gone when you die. That's not a fun idea. Nobody wants to think that when you die, you're not going to get to see your family again. You don't want to think that. Grandma's up there waiting for me. I want to see her. That'd be great. But as much as you might want something to be true, you can't force yourself to believe a lie. And I kind of got to that point. It was just hard for me. But getting through that process was slow for me. It was not fun. I had to deal with a lot of things. I stayed up at night and I was upset. I was crying. It's a painful process. So when someone comes up to me and tells me that I'm taking the easy way out, I get really pissed. I'm like, oh, you don't know. You don't know what I have to go through. You don't know the struggle. It's not like I was like, yeah, I want to sin. No more God for me. Woo! That's what they think, though. That's how they think it goes. It's ridiculous. Definitely not the easy way out. So these are things a lot of times that people struggle with. And then again, they'll still tell you, even if you explain all of this, well, you don't have any responsibilities anymore to be a good person. What motivation do you have to do good things? Because you have no God judging you at the end of the day. You have no accountability. Really? How does that Christianity thing work again? Right? You can do whatever you want. You can be a murderer. You can sin. You can be horrible things like atheists. But as long as you repent at the end of the day, as long as you accept Jesus Christ as your Lord and Savior, you're fine. Slate wipe clean. So remind me again how I'm not supposed to be held accountable? Seems kind of hypocritical. That seems like a pretty integral part of Christianity. So I don't like to be told that. It's one of my biggest pet peeves. So again, whenever you think of all these things, it becomes incredibly difficult to come out as an atheist because you know you're going to get these responses. You know people are going to look at you like that. And it's frustrating, but I think even though I had to go through these things, it was a learning process because, like I said, I was very religious. And I know I gave examples of how I began questioning things, but I was very religious. I was scared. I went through a phase of doubting Christianity, but I thought maybe it was just Catholicism. I could be a Protestant, that's fine, right? My whole life will change. I'll become a Protestant, and those churches will be different for me. I'll feel that connection that I've been searching for so much, but haven't reached. So I did. I left Catholicism, which, by the way, was traumatic enough for my mom's side of the family. Imagine how they think of me now. But yeah, I decided to be a Protestant. So I went through all these different phases, all these different churches, which was kind of weird for me, honestly. Because when you're Catholic, it's very rigid. People normally don't look very happy in Catholic churches. They're very serious. It's amen, stand up, sit down, kneel, walk in a circle. Same thing, same tone, priest sing like this. But then you go to some of these other churches, and people are singing really loudly. They're speaking in tongues. They're shaking violently. They're sitting like, Catholic. What is going on? I feel so out of my element, so that didn't work out for me. It didn't fail miserably. I just was like, it's so uncomfortable, I'm gonna run away now. It's definitely weird for a Catholic to experience that kind of stuff when you're used to the very militant, almost like very steady type of Catholic mass that they have. So I tried to experience these different things, and I have some family that's evangelical, so I decided to try that route. This was probably the worst that I ever was. Because I was so desperate to find something that I let their fear, pretty much, of hell affect me. I believed them. I bought it. They would tell me that if you weren't a Christian, even if you weren't the right type of Christian, the right denomination, you were going to hell. They're not messing around. Like, their requirements of getting into heaven are very specific, and they must know God very well because he's got very specific details of requirements, prerequisites to get into heaven, right? So I believed it. I bought it. And because of that, I let that fear become part of me. And I acted terribly towards people because of it. a couple of things that I'm particularly ashamed of is, one thing was when my uncle passed. He was not the best person, and he did a lot of things to our family that, just were terrible. And when he passed, even though he wasn't the most, I guess he wasn't the favorite person of the family, but it was still sad, A lot of people in our family were sad, and I, of course, felt like I could just tell everyone he was going to hell. Of course, people, you shouldn't do that. That's horrible. I have people in my family, yeah, he might not have been the best guy in the world, but they still were sad that he was gone. And I felt so self-righteous to say that. How horrible of me. I've apologized so many times for being that way. I also had a friend in college, and I don't know why she stayed my friend. I asked her now, I'm like, Amy, why did you stay my friend? What could you possibly have seen in someone like me? But she did. She's like, I was hoping that you'd get out of that phase. I was like, well, I did. But she had a time when we were in college where she was afraid that she was pregnant. She wasn't pregnant, of course. She, girls, whenever, the slightest thing happens, they're scared they're pregnant. You're like, no, you're just hungry. You're not pregnant. Yeah, but I didn't know you haven't had lunch. Oh yeah, I forgot. It was something like that. But for that brief 10 minutes where she was having her monthly pregnancy scare, I told her, again, being all self-righteous, if you ever are pregnant, and it's not just hunger, you better not get an abortion. Because if you do, I don't think I could be your friend anymore. Who says stuff like that? What was wrong with me? And again, another one of the situations where I have apologized to her so many times, and it still feels horrible. I don't know how people live their entire lives like this, because I can think of those two things that I did that were the most outrageous, and I still feel bad. But that just goes to show you how scared I was, how much I let this kind of thing affect me. And I think it's because I have this mentality that a lot of other religious people have. You really genuinely are worried they're going to hell. You really are. So as annoying and as, in your face as you might be, it's not them being malicious. But it's hard to receive it that way. I remember my uncle on my dad's side is a pastor, and he gave me this example one time. He said, imagine that you're standing at the middle of an intersection, and one side, cars are going to green pastures, happy things, yay. The other side falls off a cliff, everybody will die that takes that turn. Wouldn't you do everything that you could to get people to take the route of safety? I'm thinking, yeah, that makes sense. It's like, okay, so imagine you're looking people right in the eye when they're coming at you. You might not know them. You would try to help them. Yeah, of course. Now imagine that they're your friends and they're your family. At that point, you become desperate. You'll jump in front of the car. You'll do whatever it takes to save them. And that's how I felt. And I feel like that's how a lot of really religious people feel. And as annoying as it might be, and as enraging as it might be whenever they say certain things, and when they seem really judgmental, it's, I think, important to kind of remember where they're coming from. Because it will help you combat it, in a sense. So I feel like even though I went through these things, I can use it to my advantage because I can see their point of view. I already know the arguments they're going to make. I know what they're going to say before they say it because I've been there. I said those same things. I made those same arguments. It's easy for me to understand where they're coming from because I was there. So because of that, I kind of came up with, in my mind, 3 main reasons why they view atheists so terribly. Why are they so afraid of atheists? Well, one, they think we have no morals. And I'm sure you've heard about this several times before. And I've already kind of talked about how that's a bit twisted with their being able to have God forgive all their sins. But I mean, think about the Bible. The Bible is not a moral book. We've got genocide, we've got infanticide, we've got rape, we've got selling women for money or paying fines. I mean, it's just ridiculous, the kind of things that you see in the Bible. And of course, they're like, you have to look at the good things, you have to cherry pick, you have to take out the good parts of the Bible. What, like you shouldn't kill? I think that might be something that we could have figured out without all the negative things that definitely come with religion. And also, it's hard for them to realize how that might be beneficial throughout evolution, to not kill each other. A sense of altruism. But of course, whenever you try to explain these types of things, it just goes right over their head. They're like, no, you need the Bible for morality. They think we have no morals, and that scares them. And another thing is that they feel attacked. it's really hard to avoid this one, no matter what approach you take. Because even the simple act of asking a question is viewed as an attack. I've tried to have really respectful conversations with people, and it doesn't matter. Even if I don't challenge any of their points, even if I don't say, well, I don't think that's right because, or well, what about this? This is contradictory. I don't even need to do that. I can just be like, why? And that's enough to really make a lot of people mad. So how do you avoid it? I mean, there's no way around it. Whatever you say is, just a question is enough to make them feel attacked. Another reason why they feel attacked is because they feel like it's personal rejection. I'm not sure how many people you guys watch on YouTube, but one of my favorites is Dark Matter, 2525. Anybody out there watch? Oh, yeah. Amen. All right. Dark Matter's one of my favorites. And he has a video, I think it's called The Real God. And in it, he explains how the real God is each individual person, because it's pretty much a manifestation of their mind. So whenever you reject God, you're rejecting them. And they react in the same way they may react if they were rejected romantically. They take personal offense to it because it's them. You are rejecting them in a sense. So they feel personally attacked by it. And that makes sense. It's hard to avoid these types of things. And another reason is because they feel entitled. I mean, they're used to a privileged status. They're used to having in God we trust on the money. They're used to having it in the pledge, one nation under God. They're used to having it in our schools and in our hospitals and in our government buildings. So whenever you try to take that away, it's viewed as an attack. Whenever somebody holds a privileged status for long enough and you try to take that away to make things equal, we're not asking for it to be no God we trust or one nation under no God. We just want it to be secular. But that's an attack, right? Because we're used to getting our way. What are you doing? It's like a spoiled child. So they feel personally attacked by it. And I feel like the third thing, and I feel like this is the most interesting one to me because it's one that I don't really hear talked about most of the time. I've never heard it mentioned, is that the unknown is scary to people. So whenever you're an atheist, you can say things like, yeah, scientific advancements have answered a lot of things that we previously gave supernatural credit to. But then, of course, you have God of the gaps. Every time you answer one question, you make two more gaps. And they're like, aha, checkmate. You can't, tides come in, tides come out. You can't explain that, right? So they feel like that's like a valid argument. So what do we represent? We are okay with saying we don't have all the answers. So we are a direct representation of the unknown, and that's terrifying for some people. Whenever I was at TAM, did any of you guys go to TAM? Yay, I was at TAM. I'm not sure if you guys watched this speech, but somebody came up who was a medical doctor, and he gave a lecture about his experience with patients with different ailments that didn't have a diagnosis. And people would come in, he explained this, people would come in and they'd have very generalized symptoms like, oh, I have fatigue, or I'm tired, or I have headaches, I'm dizzy. And of course you're like, okay, you're taking down all these notes and you run all the tests, you take blood work, you do a CT, you do an MRI. Everything comes back normal. Well, most of the times, he said, the patients were unhappy with that. It's almost like they wanted something to be wrong with them because it was an answer. Telling somebody that they're healthy should never be received poorly, but for a lot of people it is because it makes them feel helpless. They want to have an answer. So with religious people, I feel like even if the answer that they have doesn't have evidence, at least it's an answer, better than what you can do, atheists. Because the unknown is really terrifying. And of course, I've heard this several times. They feel like there's something to majority rules. Like the more people believe something, the more credibility it must have. I mean, how many times have you heard this whenever you came out or whenever you've had conversations with people? Well, there's more of us than you. So? That's supposed to mean something to me? But they think it does. They think it does. So whenever there's more atheists and whenever they see the movement growing, they're like, well, crap, there might be something to that. They don't want that because it's a growing number of the unknown. They don't want that. But it's funny because whenever I have conversations with people who have said things like this to me, if you bring up another religion, their whole attitude changes. If you bring up Islam, for example, oh, Muslim, that's okay because you have to respect other religions. Why can't you respect me then? But it's different though, because at least they have an answer. They might believe in a different fairy tale than you, but at least they have one. You know, they still somehow validate that core deistic belief that's so important. Whereas we're out there saying, we don't know, we don't have all the answers, but we're not going to make one up. That's kind of scary for them. So one of my guilty pleasures is watching girly movies. I like to watch nonsense from time to time while I'm editing a video. I'll have it in the background or something. It's one of my guilty pleasures. And I don't remember exactly what the show was that I had on, but there were 3 girls and they were out to dinner. And they were having a great time. And it comes to the point where they get to order dessert, which is my favorite part. But they were ordering dessert, and the first girl goes, she orders chocolate cake. The second girl orders like pie or something. And then it gets to the third girl, and she's like, oh no thanks, I'm on a diet. You should see the looks that she got from the other 2 girls. They were like, what is she doing? If we're being unhealthy, so should she. Because now guess what? Now they're more self-conscious about what they're doing. She's not doing what we're doing. Oh crap, is there something wrong with what we're doing? Should we have to reevaluate what we're doing right now? Is there something wrong with what we're putting into our bodies? Is there something wrong with what we're putting into our minds? That's how a lot of people view atheism. We're the ones saying no thanks, and that's threatening. It's unfortunate, but it's a part of it. So I feel like whenever you take all of these things into consideration, you can kind of understand where they're coming from. You can see where their fears are, and it's not that hard to figure out why they are the way that they are. And when you have that, it's easy to move forward and try to think of ways to change their mind without hitting these, target points. So I wish there were some magic answer of how to get these people to view atheism differently, but there's really not. Just like for me, whenever I deconverted, it was a slow and painful process. There wasn't that makes sense, now I'm an atheist. It's not going to be like that for anyone, I don't think. So it's going to be a slow process, and we just have to have patience. But there are certain things I think we can do to help. And one of those things is to come out. Now, not everybody has to do this, and you don't have to do it in one specific way. But I think it is important, because they can look at Jane Doe down the street and be like, oh, she's so nice and normal and an atheist. Maybe they're not all that bad. I feel like that's important, and I feel like it was a big reason for the success of the LGBT movement. Because now, everybody knows somebody who's gay, and unfortunately, people have to have that kind of personal connection to a cause to feel like they care. It sucks, but a lot of people are like that. I know a lot of people who were very against gay rights, and then they found out their friend was gay, and they're like, well, might need to reconsider that. Because he's a nice guy. I don't want to, he's my friend. But you have to have that, And it's good to have that type of influence on people, because now they're more self-aware. Because they don't want to hurt their friends' feelings, they might not want to hurt others that are similar. So it's really important. And once you come out, it's important to lead by example. Oh, I know Jane Doe across the street. She's really nice and normal and an atheist. And she volunteers for charities. So once people already know that you're an atheist and they see you doing good things, they might be like, maybe they do have morals. Weird, didn't know that before. So, as important as it is to do that, I feel like there are a lot of atheist charities out there. There really are, you just don't really hear about them very much. It's almost like Christian organizations feel like they have a monopoly on it. But of course you don't hear about it. I mean, think about it. Could you imagine rapists raising money for local children's hospital? How is that going to sound? Now keep in mind, we're more distrusted than them. So atheists raising money for local children's hospital must just sound awful to most people. It's a scary concept. So because of that, a couple weeks ago I decided to conduct a little social experiment. I went out onto Hollywood Boulevard with 2 of my friends. They have the most popular lesbian couple YouTube channel right now, so I'm happy for their success, but we've been friends for years, and we decided to go out and try to get people's reactions to different things. So we went out the first day, And we had this big sign, you know, United Methodists raising money for the local children's hospital. You know, it was pretty average. I mean, I've done tons of fundraisers before, so it was run-of-the-mill. You know, people, it's Hollywood Boulevard, right? So people are walking past you, they're bumping into you, they're not really paying attention to where they're going, taking pictures of random things that don't matter. And, you know, but of course we had people who came up, oh, God bless you. They give us $1 or $2 or $5. It was nice. And we'd say, thank you, you too. You know, we made a decent amount of money that day. But that was the control. That was what we were using to compare the next day, when we went out and we were a atheist group raising money for the same children's hospital. So this was very mind-opening for me, because I've never felt personally discriminated against before, just out in the public without people knowing me. It's not like I have atheist plastered on my forehead. It's not something you just know about me. They've experienced it to a degree because, you know, they hold hands in public and they'll get looks every now and then. But I had never experienced it before, so I think it might have hit me a little bit harder. But I mean, it was incredible, the way people would look at us and judge us. And we had cameras all around, and yes, I'll be making this into a video whenever I'm done editing it. We had cameras all around, so people would kind of walk by and they'd look at us kind of weird, and then they'd get past and they'd be like, atheist. Oh. I didn't even know people's face could contort in such a way. It was like their eyes got popped out of their head. And we caught that on film. It was funny because they'd walk past us and be like, and then they'd make a face. Some people would get in our face and harass us. But it was such an uncomfortable feeling for me to be shouting from the rooftops, you know, hey, I'm an atheist. More distrusted than a rapist. Like, come on. Like, that was really weird for me. But I'm glad that we did it because I learned a lot. And actually, it was a very positive experience because we raised a lot more money that day. So it was great because when we had people come up to us, they were so excited. They were like, oh, atheists. Yes, I'm an atheist. You're out here doing something. Wow, that's so great that you're out here, you know, willingly admitting that and like raising money for a great cause. It's so great to see other atheists out here doing great things. So when people did come up to us, they'd be really emotional. They were so passionate. It was really moving to meet some of these people. But when they came up to us, they gave $20 or $10. One guy gave us $50. So even though we had significantly less people come up to us, the ones that did were so excited and were so generous that we raised more money for the children's hospital as atheists than we did as Christians. And that is a big statement for me, at least. Because it might be hard, but it's definitely worth it. And there are so many great qualities about the atheist community that we can use to branch out and do more things. But at the same time, we have to keep one more important thing in mind. And this is the last point that I want to make whenever it comes to how to make atheism positive, is we really have to keep our mind on the goal. We have to keep our mind on the goal, and we have to know when to back off. Now, I told you whenever I started making videos, I was very aggressive, and whenever I watched a lot of videos that were aggressive, at first I was offended. But I was somebody on the fence. I wasn't sure. I was searching for that kind of thing. If someone's not searching for it, if you approach them in such a way, they're immediately going to shut down. So I feel like there is a place for that type of behavior. There's a place to be over the top and animated and aggressive. And I think YouTube is a great place for that because people are asking for it when they search for you. When they click on your video, they are willingly entering something that they know might be abrasive. But if you meet a Christian on the street or you're having a conversation with a family member, you don't want to act like that. And I never have, and I never would. I would never have a conversation with somebody in my family the way I do in videos, because I know when to back off. So we have to keep our mind on the goal. What is the goal? Well, I feel like the goal is a secular society. I mean, as atheists, we stand the word atheist technically doesn't really stand for much more than not believing in a God. That's it. But the atheist community is more than that. We stand for so many good things. We stand for separation of church and state because we want it out of our classrooms. Kids should be learning evolution, not creationism. We want it out of the hospitals. It shouldn't be, holding back scientific research like stem cell research. We want it out of government buildings. We want it out of the bedrooms. We want marriage equality. We want it out of our uterus. We want gender equality. So we stand for so many really great and powerful things. That is what the goal is. The goal is a secular society where people can live freely and people can live equally. The The goal isn't necessarily that everyone's an atheist. As great as that would be, that's not my main concern. You know, if you want to be religious but secular, great. If that's the conversation I can have with my family and I can at least get them to admit that the separation of church and state is a good thing, I feel like I've done something good. Baby steps. You know? And there's a lot of people who are uncomfortable saying the word atheist, and that's okay. You know, as much as I would like for it to be destigmatized by more people using it, I feel like eventually, if we keep this up, we'll get to that point naturally. But trying to force it just doesn't feel right to me. I mean, it kind of reminds me of a giant knot. I feel like society has just formed this giant knot. And you have to start from the bottom and work your way up slowly. You can't just stick it in the top and rip it down because you're just going to make it tighter and more resistant. You know, you just can't approach it that way. You have to take baby steps. So that's what I kind of want to do. So if somebody wants to say they're agnostic, even though I don't like that word technically because it defines a position of knowledge, not belief, that's fine. If you want to say that, that's okay. Or if you want to say you're a secular humanist, that's fine. If you want to say you're a skeptic, that's fine. Or, hey, I don't know how religious I am, or I'm non-religious, that's fine. I don't care. Just keep your mind on the goal. What is the goal? If you're for a secular society and you fight for the same equal rights, I'm not going to nitpick with you. Great, we're all on the same team. Let's work together. And we can, and we have been. And the movement's been growing, and I'm really excited because, like I said, meeting those people on the street, I know we have that going for us. We're an extremely passionate group of people. And we are fighting for the right things. I already mentioned all the great things that we're fighting for. So it's not necessarily, you know, a matter of making atheism a positive thing because it is a positive thing. The trick is just getting everybody out there who's so used to stigmatizing it to realize that. We're good people, and something so great cannot go unnoticed forever. So thank you.
Okay, great. So we have some questions. I will bring this microphone over to you so you can... Yes, let me bring this over to you.
Hello. I'm somebody who has never been a believer in God. I wasn't raised religious. I've been an atheist all my life.
Lucky you.
And when I come to a group like this, it's a lot like being a non-alcoholic at an AA meeting. You know, and the thing is that, you know, I don't look at atheism as a destination. I look at atheism as a step toward realism, which is about reality, because atheism ultimately is about nothing, and if atheism is completely successful, it becomes totally meaningless. Mm-hmm. Where, you know, throughout your whole speech, which I agreed with, you know, everything you said, it was all about God. You were talking about God and religion and your relationships and your history, and I understand that. There's a lot of people here who had that background. But to me, I am totally disinterested in God. I'm totally disinterested in the Bible. But the things that really turn me on is I can sit there and listen to Elon Musk speak on YouTube for, you know, days. You know, Lawrence Krauss, you know, scientific stuff, Big Bang, quantum mechanics. You know, are we going to move out into space? I'm interested in politics. I'm interested in society. I'm interested in reality. And you aren't talking about reality yet. You know, I feel like that the atheist identity thing, although I am an atheist and I believe in it, has flaws because atheism is about God. And, you know, instead of, you know, atheists reading the Bible and talking about God, atheists should be talking about science and have a reality positive identity, you know. So humanist, realist, naturalist, whatever is the ultimate destination.
Mark, the
question is, what do you think of that?
I knew that was coming. You know what? I totally agree with you. And in an ideal world, that would be all I would want to talk about. But whenever you live in a society full of people who think that the earth is 6,000 years old, or that Jesus rode a dinosaur, you can't really start off like that. And it's impossible to get through to these people. I mean, they really think that they know science, and they think they're getting it from the Bible. there are people who are Islamic who feel like salt water and fresh water won't mix because it says so in the Quran. Even if you show them in front of their face, they won't believe you. So unfortunately, we have to get past that kind of thing before we can, talk about anything real. I mean, you can go to scientific conventions and hear about it all you want, but it's not going to influence the political process whenever you have an overwhelming number of people who are extremely religious. And that's where we live. And that's why I think it's really important for us to be able to understand where they're coming from. Because then you can find a way to stick your foot in the door and be like, I get what you're saying and why you're saying it, but facts, So, I mean, that's part of it. Understanding people around you and the culture and identifying with people and trying to get them to take steps towards reality is going to be a lot slower than hopping from point A to point C. There's a lot of steps in between, and this is part of it. So.
If you want to learn about science, come to our other meetings. Involved in that.
Thanks, Jaclyn, for coming. You said that when you're talking to somebody in person, you don't want to be as aggressive with them as you would be with somebody that you're talking over a screen or whatever. And then I thought, well, what about the people who come and get aggressive with you, like the Mormons who knock on your front door and start saying, well, hear the word of the Lord. It's like, what's the proper way to approach those people?
Well, it is very in your face, but I don't really view it as aggressive because most Mormons that knock on my door are very happy. Hello! I have a bucket of sunshine for you. But no, it's okay. I mean, you can approach these people, in an irritated way, if that's how you feel. I mean, they knock on your door. Whatever they get is their own fault at this point. But it'd probably be more effective to, if you're interested in trying to change their mind, they're interested in trying to change yours, so you might as well at this point, you can bring them in and have a conversation with them, and maybe that might get through. I kind of doubt it, because people who are evangelizing like that are not really the most open-minded people, because they're on a mission, and that's to convert you, not the other way around. So yeah, it's hard, and I definitely don't deal with people in person as aggressively as I do in videos, because like I said, in videos I'm kind of reaching a different audience. I'm reaching the people who are on the fence, or maybe people who are atheists and are unsure about it, or are afraid to come out. So you can be a little bit more aggressive with them, because that's what worked for me. I was offended, but like I said, I didn't know why. I didn't know why I was offended, and because of that, I was able to question myself to the point of realizing that as much as I might not like it, they were right. But like I said, with religious people, you can't act like that, because it's not, and you're just going to compact it even more, and they're not going to listen. So, depends.
So you had a very religious upbringing. It was your family life. Mine was not. It was very tepid at home, almost never mentioned. I got sent to Sunday school. I didn't go with anybody. Do you think I missed anything that you got that was positive?
No. I mean, that's a good question, actually. That's a good question, because a lot of people think that when you have kids, how else are you going to teach them right from wrong? They have to go to, church. I feel like it sometimes is a responsibility that parents like to kick out and, give to the school or the church, and it's not really a matter of that. I feel like sometimes it is important, though, for kids to feel like they're a part of something. And I was having this conversation the other day with Judy about bringing up kids and maybe bringing them to something like the Sunday Assembly. And I know this might be a controversial thing for some people, because some people are very, turned off by that kind of thing. But it might be good to have kids, in an environment with people who are also atheists. So if they ever have to deal with something, in a situation where they're being, made fun of for it, they can be like, well, I'm not the only one. There are tons of us. It's a great, happy place. So I'm not sure if you had something like that, like it was a community that you could be a part of. But I mean, if you went to school, that's a community, You could be in different clubs or groups and organizations, and I feel like learning to work with other people is not something that you can only learn at a church, And I went through so many horrible things, and like I said, and I say this all the time, I feel like with religion, you can have the good parts of religion without having the religion. You can have the basic morality, but with religion, you have to take all the bad stuff that comes along with it too. So whenever you're free from that, I definitely don't think you're missing out on anything except for some childhood indoctrination and some stuff that probably would mess with your mind a little bit. So I'm envious of that.
Extra guilt.
Yeah. Oh yeah, you're missing out on a lot of guilt.
You mentioned that you sort of had gone through some stages of religion, and have you developed or evolved an explanation or strategy for the criticism that, well, you're just in another phase? You know, it's you're in your atheist phase. I mean, you mentioned.
Yeah, no, I get that all the time. You know, my parents are still waiting for me to come out of my phase.
Right.
You know, that happened whenever I was of voting age and I went out and voted in favor of marriage equality. I got into actually quite a bit of trouble for that. They were not happy with me. And I was still living under my parents' roof at the time, so I had to deal with that. And they're like, oh, you're just going through this liberal phase. Okay. I'm just going through this phase of being accepting of others. Hopefully one day that passes. No, I mean, it's hard, because I feel like I'm always going to get that. You know, maybe I'll have to be an atheist for 50 years before they might start to think that it's not a phase anymore. But I mean, I've so fully ingrained myself into this. Like, you know, it's all that I do, it's all that I talk about. You know, sometimes I'll touch on other issues, but mostly it's atheism. You know, whenever I told my family that I was going to Northern California to do some speaking events, they're like, about atheism? Yes, Mom. But no, that's just something that I feel like I'm going to have to deal with. I just tell them, no, it's not a phase, and I tell them straight up that it's insulting to say so, because I said this is something that I've devoted so much of myself to, and it's something that I have such strong convictions in. For you to tell me that it's just a phase is extremely insulting to almost everything that I stand for. So I try to tell them that, but you know, how many times can you give that answer and have it just go in one ear and out the other before you just give up? Nope, not a phase. So, yeah.
Jaclyn, you've mentioned several times that you had arguments that you didn't like, but finally convinced you about the truth of there being no God. Could you express perhaps in a short amount of time what those were?
Yeah, it wasn't really so much arguments, but it was like the irreverence of it. You know, sometimes the arguments would frustrate me. But I feel like, like I said before, it's a knee-jerk response. Like, I would have somebody point out blatant contradictions or blatant things in the Bible that were just horrible, like, you know, against equality of some sort or another. Yeah, slavery, or, you know, killing kids, or, you know, there's so many different things you can point to, and they would point these things out, and even though they were true, and I knew they were true, I'd be kind of pissed, because you're sitting there, you're mocking my religion, you're mocking my holy book. But, oh yeah, there it is. He's right. You know, it is right there. There is slavery. There is all this murder. You know, so it's almost like pointing out facts I took as an insulting thing. And it was the way that they did it too. They were very aggressive and they were very angry. And as much as I wanted to just, you know, not listen to that, I couldn't help it because I would look it up. And honestly, this is another thing, whenever you're raised Catholic, you get more from the catechism of the Catholic Church than you get from the Bible. Like, they really don't, in church, read much from the Bible except for the, you know, prodigal son or things that you've heard over and over again. And then the rest of it comes from the catechism. So, you know, they don't ever, I mean, even in Protestant churches, I'm sure they don't touch on the horrible things. They pretend like they don't even exist. I mean, they're good at pretending things don't exist because they're good at pretending things exist. So that shouldn't be shocking. But, you know, they don't point out those things. And if you're in an environment where they don't really go through the Bible very much, you might not have known that those things were there. And simply pointing that out, it's like you're taken aback and you're like, no, and you want to defend it, but you can't because it's right there in front of your face. So there was a lot of that I had to deal with, and they were right. I don't know where the mic is. Okay.
Hi there. What's your take on atheism plus?
I was hoping that somebody would ask me that, because it got totally avoided the last time that I brought it up. In a video that I made about it pretty recently, I explained my thoughts on atheism plus with an example of movies and popcorn. I'm not sure if you guys remember this. But there was a club in my high school that had this really great idea of having kids after school get together and they play a film, and they'd give out popcorn. And it was such a fun idea. We're going to call it a really original name, Movies and Popcorn. So, you know, we went to this a couple of times, but it just didn't work out because the kids they just stick their hands in the bucket of popcorn and serve it to you. And like, I'm a germaphobe, so that kind of thing was like, ugh. And the movies that they played were boring, and of course I went to a Catholic school, so it was all like Disney movies and stuff I really didn't feel like watching again. You know, so the club failed pretty miserably. And I don't think that's because movies and popcorn are a bad combination. I just think it was executed very poorly. And whenever I would go home, I'd still watch movies and eat popcorn. And obviously you heard me stand here today, and you know I'm an atheist, and you know that I stand for all the plus. You know, I'm supportive of equality in every sense of the word, and secularism. So technically, the core beliefs of that, I agree with, just like I like popcorn with my movies. But I'm not joining that club. So that's my answer.
All right, so we have time for maybe like 2 more questions. Anybody else? Yes, let me get over there.
I hope this is not too off topic, but have you looked into Scientology?
Not very much. No, thank you. I went into one of their shops one time and got a reading, and it was just very weird for me. Very weird experience. And Tom Cruise is cool and all, but...
You did a reading?
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, there's one right on Hollywood Boulevard, like not too far from where I live. So, you know, I walked past it, and the guy is standing out there trying to get people to come in every day. One time I was like, fine. I don't even know what they said. It was some really weird alien thing. I don't know. I was like, okay, thank you, bye.
They're right down the street here.
If there's one down the street, we should all go. Field trip.
Field trip.
Field trip.
Hi there.
Hi.
When you mentioned that you were a vegetarian and animal rights person, that my heart just leapt because that's my cause first and foremost. So I'm just wondering, how does that reconcile with your atheism? Did that come from being an atheist and what you've learned about you know, life and rights and that kind of thing? And how do you reconcile that?
That actually happened way before being an atheist. Because whenever I started making videos, it was mostly for animal rights causes, and then later on down the road, I started questioning faith and began making videos about that. I mean, honestly, I'm the same person I was when I was religious. Obviously, like I said, I was scared into doing things that are obviously clearly immoral. But that was whenever I was like going through a phase that was pretty radical. But for the most part, you know, I'm the same person. I've always really loved animals. I've always loved other people. You know, that's why I went into medicine. I wanted to help other people and things like that. You know, so being a vegetarian just kind of came naturally to me. And being the kind of person that doesn't like to ignore things whenever they're presented to me, whenever I watched documentaries like Earthlings or, you know, Meet Your Meat or things like that, I couldn't pretend like that wasn't going on. And I don't want to judge anybody, you know, who doesn't do the same thing as me, but I personally just didn't want to be part of it. So I stopped. It was just something that I chose not to do anymore. And being an atheist really has nothing to do with it, you know. I think it's just part of me. So, yeah.
Cool. All right, let's give her another hand. Thank you, Jaclyn.